At the turn of the century, Studebaker entered the fledgling automobile market and became the only American company to successfully transition from horse-drawn to self-propelled vehicles.
Momentum growing in Indiana's third largest city. South Bend blazing a new trail since its early days as a driving force in four-wheel transportation. On the move now with a native son running the show.
Cities and places don't always get second chances. It's exciting. As someone who was born and raised here, who, this was not the hope. This was not necessarily, people didn't necessarily have this optimism and belief in our city. So it's exciting to see that.
South Bend Mayor James Mueller spearheading a new vision for the city, from revitalizing downtown to strengthening its partnerships with Notre Dame, the university synonymous with South Bend. Get to know Mayor Mueller on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. James Mueller grew up in South Bend, Indiana, classmates with U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary and former two-term South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Once Buttigieg decided not to seek a third term, it was time for Mueller to step up. And this triple major in math, history, and philosophy with a Ph.D. in oceanography did just that. Mueller, now in his second term, reelected just last year. You are a South Bend guy, South Bend native, grew up there, Notre Dame undergraduate degree. Actually, and I found this interesting, a triple major, math, history, and philosophy. Then you went on to get a PhD in oceanography from the University of Delaware. How did you wind up in city government and politics?
Yeah, it's not the straightest path to city government or politics, but it's something that, public policy had been an interest of mine throughout time. But as you mentioned, I had three majors, so I didn't necessarily figure out what I was going to do, and I got into ocean science because it started out as a summer on the beach in between my junior and senior year. So loved the ocean, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my early 20s, and ended up getting a PhD in Delaware. But then shortly thereafter, I got a fellowship upon graduating in Delaware and to work in the United States Senate. So I worked in the United States Senator Maria Cantwell's of Washington State's office and worked on energy and climate policy for about 4 years, and then was working in George Washington University on solar energy policy. They had an institute there, and that's when I got a call from my high school friend Pete Buttigieg, who was mayor of South Bend, and asked if I'd come home to be his chief of staff. So that's kind of the short version of how I got involved in local and municipal politics. But one of the things that I noticed right away, coming from the federal level to the local level, is just the impact you can have and the tangible results you can see. It takes years to get anything of substance done at the federal level, whereas at the local level, things can happen very quickly.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about Pete Buttigieg because maybe a precursor to your political career, because you've known him all the way since grade school, right? Kind of lifelong friends.
So we actually we overlapped at the same preschool. I don't remember him, at 4 years old per se, but my first real memory is in high school. So freshman year. First week of high school, we met, and that's what I remember. Maybe he remembers back to 4 years old, but that's more foggy for me.
You served in his administration as chief of staff in additional roles as well. Has he been, or does he continue to be, a political mentor to you?
Well, I mean, he's a star in the Democratic Party. When you make a short list for vice president at the age of 42, he certainly elevated himself as a star of the party. So absolutely, he is a mentor in terms of political advice, as well as he served as mayor for 8 years. So in terms of city leadership as well.
Yeah, and when you decided to run for mayor, one of your pledges was that you wanted to continue the momentum that the Buttigieg administration had built on. Have you done that? Talk about your desire to do that, to carry on that momentum in South Bend.
Absolutely. This is you said, how do you get to municipal office earlier? How did I get to be an elected official is another a good question. And it's really not something I ever aspired to do or ever thought I would do. But when he decided to move on and run for president back in for the 2020 cycle and not seek a third term as mayor, I was at that time serving as his economic development director. And so just seeing all of this momentum, all of this progress that had never happened in my lifetime in my hometown, that really was the inspiration for me to step up and try this new thing, elected office and campaigning. I'd never worked on a campaign before my own, and I'd been involved in tangentially on the policy side for when Senator Cantwell was up for re-election, and when I was chief of staff for Pete. When he was running for re-election for mayor in 2015. So jumped into this, and really because of all of the things going on here, cities and places don't always get second chances. And so, South Bend was world famed a century ago, and then we hit a hard time, like a lot of places in the Midwest, for the second half of last century, and we've been digging our way out. And then, now it's all coming together here in the past 15 years or so. And it's exciting as someone who was born and raised here, who, this was not the hope. This was not necessarily, people didn't necessarily have this optimism and belief in our city. So it's exciting to see that. And if you had told me when I ran in 2019 that we'd be where we are today, obviously we were hopeful, we were optimistic, but we are surpassing even the wildest dreams. And then if you had told me there would be a worldwide pandemic in the middle for 2 years and we'd still be here, I would have said you're crazy. So It's an exciting time here. It does feel like it's South Bend's time again, and really looking forward to what's coming down the road.
There is a lot going on in South Bend and in St. Joe County more broadly that will have an impact certainly on South Bend as well. I want to talk about that. But you grew up there. As you reflect back on growing up in South Bend, what life was like then compared to what it's like today, how would you compare the two? And how does, what's going on now and growing up there shape your thought process as mayor?
Well, like I said, there was kind of this cloud over us after Studebaker closed that kind of hung over us for a long time. And there was kind of a sense of pessimism. And so part of it is selling our community, selling the good things. So there have always been good things in South Bend, even through the toughest of times. But now, when people come and visit, they can see that this is a community on the rise, on an upward trajectory. So that's the difference, is more and more people are seeing what South Bend has to offer, and they're liking what they see.
Mayor, how important is that? I guess I'd call it the psychological piece in getting a community to believe and to get excited about what's going on. Because as you mentioned, and other communities certainly have faced the same thing with job loss and longtime employers closing or leaving. There tends to be a negative attitude that becomes pervasive. How important is it to get on that positive track?
I mean, it's critical to get the positive momentum, positive vibes going, because it really, this renaissance here or this comeback for South Bend is fueled on a lot of people locally taking risks, investing dollars. And you're not going to do that if you don't have a hopeful vision for the future. You're not going to put those dollars at risk. And so you've got to get that belief in the city as well as the future if you're going to get people to really come together. And it's not just the investors and the developers. It's also the local, just your social capital, your social talent. People aren't going to invest their time and energy into making the community a better place if they don't have hope that you're going to make it.
Certainly a recent announcement that fits in, or that collides, if you will, with quality of life efforts there in South Bend in northern Indiana and around the state of Indiana. Lilly Endowment making a huge commitment to colleges and universities around the state of Indiana. I believe it was in excess of $300 million. And part of that money going to a project in downtown South Bend. The former South Bend Tribune building will have new life. And in part because of a partnership with the University of Notre Dame, Holy Cross College. Talk about that partnership, the new future, if you will, for that building and how it fits into the broader picture in downtown South Bend.
Well, the partnership between the University of Notre Dame and the city has grown stronger and stronger over time. And throughout our history, South Bend was rising to world fame in the beginning. Since our beginning in the middle 1800s through the middle of last century, and Notre Dame was also rising from an upstart university here in northern Indiana to an internationally renowned research university that it is today. And for a long time, we were doing things independently. And then, maybe the 80s, 90s, we started to realize, well, we're both critical entities here. We need to make sure we're working together. That partnership was brought to the next level under my predecessors, Mayor Lickey and Mayor Buttigieg. And then now we're taking it even further with this step where they're committed and coming into the heart of our downtown, bringing back a historic building that used to house the South Bend Tribune, and make sure that this is a place and a center for our region in terms of economy and jobs of the future.
And this is an innovate. Would it be an accurate description? An innovation center of some sort would be part of this?
Absolutely, and technology and other pieces going along with that, and that's what's critical. Notre Dame has one of the things that maybe hasn't been appreciated is how much they've been investing to become a research university over the past 15 years. And if you look at the number of dollars coming in and dollars that they're putting toward that, it's been a substantial rise over the past 10, 15 years. And there's a lot of economic opportunities that can come out of those investments in the research. And so they're also working with us on how can we commercialize those opportunities or those research insights. And then, how do we make sure that they stay right here in South Bend? So we've had some success having that transfer, the technology transfer from the university to a local profitable firm. But we've also had success in firms that then leave the South Bend region. So this is really at the heart of let's make sure that these, as much as possible, these economic benefits stay right here in the South Bend region.
Talk about, Mayor, if you would, the importance of that partnership with Notre Dame. As you mentioned, Notre Dame for a number of years was not necessarily engaged in economic development and connecting with community. And when I say community, I mean more broadly the state of Indiana as well. And there's certainly been a dramatic change in that respect and very much an intentional strategy to help the South Bend area and more broadly the state of Indiana grow. How important is that partnership with Notre Dame?
I mean, it's critical. They're not just a major employer in the region, which they have been, and certainly been a stabilizing force, even when they weren't as engaged with the community. They were a stabilizing force for our economy. But now that they're looking to continue to take this partnership to the next level, that's a big part of our success, and that's a big part of why there's so much hope and optimism here in South Bend.
Again, a lot going on in South Bend and St. Joseph County as well. I want to touch on another project that I think just opened recently here within the last 2 weeks that I believe you were involved with in making that happen in a previous role with the city, and that's the Dinosaur Museum and Chocolate Factory. Mark Tarner, tremendous entrepreneur and visionary there, and we had him on the podcast a few weeks ago talking about it. Talk about this dinosaur museum, because people think, oh, dinosaur museum, what the heck is that in South Bend? But it is quite an investment and a vision on the part of a lot of people there. What do you think that's going to bring to the area?
Well, yeah, this was something that that landed on my desk when I was the economic development director for Mayor Pete. And at first, what's great to see now is this come to reality, and people can see it for themselves. And for many years, it kind of become a bit of a punchline in our community, because they said there's going to be chocolate, there's going to be dinosaurs, there's going to be a buffalo, there's going to be this and that, and it kind of sounds like a mad dream in some ways. I do tease Mark Tarner, the entrepreneur behind it. I said for a while this was a vision in only one man's head, and it was his head, but at the heart of it, in terms of an economic development tool, it was a relocation of his successful business, the South Bend Chocolate Company. So he's moving his factory to this site and expanding the operations there. So at the very heart of it, that's one piece. Then you talk about the tourism piece. How do you draw people out to, get more people to South Bend? And then you think about it, there are random places that bring a lot of people in every year. And if you look at them, if you kind of look at it for what it is, you'd say, why are people going to visit that? But when you think about this, what child doesn't like chocolate, and what child isn't fascinated by dinosaurs? And when you put the two together, as well as all the other amenities on the site, it's actually on a beautiful natural landscape in South Bend. There are actually hills on this site that we don't have a lot in northern Indiana. And so when you put together kind of the environmental and the landscape with all of these amenities, it's truly going to be an attraction, and it's right on a corridor that gets a lot of traffic every year. So it's going to bring people to South Bend. It's going to show them something different. And then even for our local community, it offers amenities that people who choose to live here are going to be able to take advantage of.
Much more ahead with South Bend Mayor James Mueller. The landscape in South Bend and St. Joseph County changing dramatically with some major economic development deals that have recently been announced. We'll talk about that, the mayor's path to the mayor's office, and much more. That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is South Bend Mayor James Mueller, now in his second term as mayor in South Bend. And Mayor, we talked about several big projects underway in South Bend, quality of life projects, but the region has landed some very high profile economic development deals in the new Carlisle area, which I get, is that in the western part of the county?
Yeah, just a few miles west of South Bend.
Yeah, including the largest economic development deal in terms of investment dollars in state history, $11 billion, an Amazon data center, GM, Samsung, SDI with the joint venture partnership for electric vehicle components. One of those would have been a big deal, but two of those are landing in the region. How is that going to really reshape not just that new Carlisle area, but the entire county and really region?
Well, I mean, I have to say there's a lot of partnerships that come together to make these things possible. Our county government has led this along the way, making sure that they had a site ready for these major investments. And I'll tell you, they went through a lot of difficulty when they were getting the site ready without any promise that there was going to be an investment like this.
Right.
And so going through those difficult times and those political challenges of getting this site ready certainly goes to our county team. And the city teamed up with them to make sure the utilities, we would work with them to get the utilities out there. And so we're happy to partner in that way. But then, the state of Indiana, Governor Holcomb's administration has truly put Indiana on the map globally, and gotten us the recognition that this is a good place to invest. And so we appreciate all of the partners and things. That's what all these things lining up. It takes everything. Any one of those things, if they didn't go the right way, would have meant we would have missed out on these amazing opportunities. So, and this is going to transform our region completely. And going back to the Holcomb administration, he was committed to transportation and investing in the South Shore line. And so when you think of the South Bend region to our west, right now our region is called the South Bend Elkhart Regional, and Elkhart's to our east. What's happening now is our west is about to really explode with all of these investments, all these developments, and that really puts now you can consider it from the west part to the east part. South Bend's right in the middle of all that action, and we're the largest city in the region. So this is going to be a great, a lot of great opportunities for South Bend residents and South Bend as a whole, and really great for the region. And if you go even further, Michigan City is not that far away from us. They have the double tracking project there is helpful to be able to get to and from Chicago in well under 90 minutes from Michigan City. They have lakefront property in Michigan City. Not a lot of places in Indiana can say they have lakefront property. So there's a lot that's going to happen up here in the coming years. And so it's South Bend's time, but it's also our region's time.
Yeah. And you mentioned the South Shore and really transformational projects with the double tracking in Northwest Indiana, the extension of the South Shore as well. Talk about how that, with all the things you talk about going on in St. Joseph County there, and transportation and trains. I know there's been talk of I think a station, right, in potentially New Carlisle, a station either at the airport or downtown. What's the future of transit, if you will, in this evolving area?
Yeah, I mean, we learned in the pandemic that certainly technology is able to connect people virtually like never before, but there are limitations to that. We still need physical connections to be able to drive, the economy and economic opportunities. And so these physical connections are going to continue to be important into the future. So the South Shore, there's a station already at the South Bend Airport. The question is, do you move it to the west side of the airport or do you move it somewhere else? It's expensive to do either one of those, but we're working together to figure out how can we get the funding to make that an even more seamless trip from South Bend to Chicago. And whenever you're talking about connection, I mean, Chicago is the third largest economy in the country, and so it's if you're wanting to drive opportunity, you need to be connected to where that opportunity is. So that's critical. We're also working on potentially relocating our Amtrak station downtown. In the historic Union Station building on the south side of downtown. So these connections are critical to make sure people can get to and from where opportunity is and where leisure opportunities are.
And you talk about the potential, that connectivity, the connection to Chicago, not just Northwest Indiana, but to Chicago, and then the fiber that's buried underneath the toll road. It would seem that South Bend is really uniquely positioned to take advantage of those opportunities as well.
Absolutely. On the north side of town, we've got the interstate. Obviously we have the railroads going right through our communities here in northern Indiana. I mean, this is what made us the crossroads of America, and all of those assets that powered our economy over the past couple centuries are still here and still relevant to be taken advantage of now.
You mentioned collaboration, cooperation. You are a Democrat, the Holcomb administration, Republicans. Talk about, in your view, the cross-party, if you will, collaboration, and does it exist? Is it an important part of getting things done? How would you assess that?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical because, as we talked about in terms of bringing the big projects to the West, if something doesn't work in the whole system, that can grind opportunities and progress to a halt. And what I appreciate about the Holcomb administration, what I appreciate about our local state delegation, both Democrat and Republicans, they can disagree on a lot of policy things, but they're committed to work together to advance our community. And that's critical because if you get into personal or partisan fights that block a project, that doesn't serve the residents, it doesn't serve our community, it doesn't serve our state. And what's troubling to me is if I would love for the Democratic Party to have a successful administration like Governor Holcomb, and for his party to, I would love to adopt him. I mean, he's done so much for the state. He's driven so much progress across Indiana. I would love to be able to call him a Democrat because of all the things he's been able to get accomplished. And it's in the northern part of the state, sometimes we feel like we don't always get the attention or the resources that other parts of the state have. But under the Holcomb administration, he's looked at investing and really driving our state forward and making opportunities available for everyone, whether in northern Indiana, southern Indiana, or central Indiana. And that's critical because there are a lot of opportunities across our state, not just in the Indianapolis or the Donut counties. there's a lot of opportunities for growth across the state. And I appreciate all of the investments and attention that the Holcomb administration has given to that.
As you look at so many things going on in South Bend and northern Indiana, with growth and opportunity come challenges as well. What would you pinpoint maybe as the top one or two challenges facing South Bend and the region?
Well, you always, these are good challenges to have, of course. And when you're talking about growth, South Bend is experiencing record population growth, well over the growth from many decades ago. And when you have that, then you start having growth challenges, transportation, housing. So I believe housing, just like across the country, is probably the principal challenge. Is how, with the cost of construction and the needs that we have, how do we make progress and build the units that we need? And this is a nationwide challenge. And we can do so much at the local level, but we do need our partners at the state and federal levels to, they've identified it as a problem, but we need them to be thinking about solutions and putting more resources to solve the problem. And so, we appreciate what we've been able to do, and we'll continue to do what we have here locally, the resources we have. But we do need our state and federal partners to step up on housing.
Yeah, and as you look at that, are there what's the private sector's role there in terms of investing? Because I know housing, and as we get around the state and do events in every corner of the state, invariably housing is listed as that number one issue. What's the role of the private sector? Is there interest in helping to step in, invest and help solve the issue?
Absolutely. I mean, our strategy is pretty simple. We want all the above. We want affordable housing, we want market rate of housing, and we want everything in between, because we need all those housing types. And so, as you know, even some market rate housing is difficult to it is by definition market rate, but the market is very broken. So the private sector is ready to come in and build these things, but it has to pencil out, and that's where the government comes in to make sure that it does pencil out and these investments are able to be made and made in a sustainable way. So whether it's from a market rate or density here, that we're building in our downtown, or more traditional single or multi or smaller multifamily units, it really is, the market is broken by itself. It's not going to fix it without government intervention. I mean, whether you're Republican or Democrat, there was a time where we recognized the pure economics, market failures. And if there's a market failure, you need to come together with a solution to fix it. And, we've done a lot on regulation. In South Bend, we've tried to streamline the red tape, tried to get costs down as much as possible. But now there's still a gap in many places. And so at some point there has to be that recognition that it's not just going to happen. It's going to take a deliberate action from our state, from our federal government and local governments working together.
As we wrap up, Mayor, your vision of what South Bend and that area will look like in 5-10 years or beyond. You grew up there, as we talked about earlier. Things are in transition and changing with a lot of positive developments, certainly now. As you look at those big economic development deals, the Amazon data center, the EV battery plant, those are going to attract additional investment. The state is pushing investment in new energy in a number of areas that part of the state can participate in. What's South Bend going to look like in your view in the future? Maybe long after you're out of office.
Well, I'm very careful to make predictions now, because as we started out, if you had said in 2019 when I first ran for mayor that in 5 years we'd be having all of these kind of investments just 5 years later with a pandemic in the middle, I would have said, well, that's great, but I don't know how we're going to get there. And I think that's the same now. We're hopeful, we're optimistic for the next 5-10 years, but I have a feeling we're going to exceed even the wildest expectations that we have now for 5 or 10 years. So I see an explosion of growth and opportunity here in South Bend and the greater region.
South Bend Mayor James Mueller. Mayor Mueller, it's really been a pleasure chatting with you and hearing about all of the good things and challenges going on in South Bend. I know as we get around the state, it is so exciting to see positive momentum not just here in Indianapolis and central Indiana, but every corner of the state. And look forward to covering future developments in South Bend as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.